Welcome to the Cookbook, where we invite guests on to share the ingredients of what has helped make them the successes that they are. All of it, the good, the not so good. You're not going to find anything half-baked here. And our kitchen gets messy sometimes. That's when the fun starts. So come on and join us. Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Cookbook. Today I am, as you know about all my guests, super excited about my guest today, Carrie Severson, and she is in that group that you always hear me talking about, the dames, but she's an extremely cool woman. She's done so many things, and I'm going to read her bio. And then we're gonna bring her on. And I do want to give a shout out to I never do this, to my hairdresser, because I got my hair done today, and she every time we do one of these, she's like, you turn to the right, you turn to the left, and I'm like, we need to touch that up. We need to touch that up. So I just want to give a shout out to Carrie, who works at Evan Todd Salon in West Lafayette, Indiana. So anyway, okay, I'm gonna read Carrie's bio and bring her on. So it's a short one. Carrie Severson is a 4-time published author. Her latest book, Unapologetically Enough, explores what saying yes to yourself looks like after burnout, infertility, and heartbreak through the lens of enoughness. Carrie Severson founded an independent publishing house and is passionate about elevating female authors in the world. You can learn more about her at www.unapologeticallyenough.com, and we will be streaming the website and her LinkedIn profile as we go on. And without further ado, here's Carrie.
Hi, everyone. Hi. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. When we talked, you've done like all the things, so many different businesses, but this latest thing, the book, Unapologetically Enough, is kind of exploding a little bit. You got picked up for a wellness, was it a wellness company, and they're including your book in their package?
Yeah, it's a self-care subscription company, one of these monthly curated boxes called Passion and Growth, headquartered out of Texas, and they put together themed boxes that highlight different elements of wellness. And they picked up Unapologetically Enough for their September box, so 1,000 copies. It's a huge partnership. It's very time consuming, and to move and print 1,000 copies, pack them up in a truck, ship them across the country, unpack them, pack them back up, send them out. It's wow. Such a great opportunity, and it's a beautiful example of entrepreneurship at its best, where really a huge partnership, great opportunity, beautiful marketing opportunities, and then learning how to celebrate all these small steps, like winning the account, or and then getting paid, and getting the green light on shipping.
Which is the best part, right?
Right.
The paid part, right? So
yeah, it's great. It's beautiful. And it's just one example of what's happening right now. So
right. So why don't you tell us about what's happening? Well, why don't we talk about Unapologetically Enough a little bit, and then talk about the things that are happening.
So Unapologetically Enough is a book about learning how to accept myself as enough. It does touch on burnout, entrepreneurship, mental health, self-care. And as a woman, as an entrepreneur and a woman, I put so much energy into my career right out of the gate as a 20-year-old, as a 30-year-old, that I really let my personal life sort of take a back seat. So when I did stop, recover from burnout, figure out what lights my soul on fire, come back to my happy place, I was in my late 30s by that point. I put energy into preserving my fertility and ended up going through rounds of IVF. Both of them failed and got really, really sick. And so burnout isn't just a professional aspect. We can be burnt out because of the pandemic, for our finances, whatever, some family situation.
Yep.
And in my case, it was being burnt out from trying to attach myself to the term mother when it wasn't happening. And so I went through a second round of healing for my personal life. And so Unapologetically Enough really bridges the aspect of what it is to love myself without professional accolades or without the term mother, and coming home, to myself. So it's a beautiful little story. I'm very proud of it. And it's getting great reviews and hitting home, which I'm super excited about.
Well, I'm sure that's hitting home. I mean, that's that had to be hell. Number one. I mean, I don't have kids. My wife and I were thinking about it probably about 10 years ago, and financially, it just wasn't going to be feasible, which kind of sucked at the time because we both really got to the point that we were like, okay, we're ready, and then couldn't do it. But but yeah, I mean, I get it. And burnout, you're right. I mean, it is so, there's so many different types. I know that when COVID hit, I was beyond burnt. I mean, I was fried. I was just like, I couldn't handle it. I couldn't handle the fact that I couldn't control what other people were doing. And, you talk about mental health. I reached out for my therapist, who I hadn't spoken to in like 20 years, because I ended up putting myself, my biggest fear was that my wife or I would die alone in the hospital, right? Because you couldn't have visitors and all this. And it was almost like a self-fulfilled prophecy. I gave myself a panic attack that I thought was a heart attack. So she had to take me to the hospital. She dropped me off, and I was like, I may never see her again. And I get in there and they're like, no, it's not a heart attack. You gave you have a panic attack. So I called her up and I said, okay, you can pick me up. And, we're in the car, and I just looked at her and I was like, I just want to feel good. I'm just tired of all this. And she said, I'm more worried about your mental health than your physical health.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things that, make you kind of stop and go, oh, shit, I didn't even think about that.
Yep.
And then I reached out to, I luckily found her, Angie, and she, Angie Michaelak, she's in Chicagoland. But anyway, she was there. Like I was like, is this where Angie works? And she was like, oh my God, it's me. Text me. And I was like, thank you, God. Because I didn't want to go through my whole story again with somebody here and, where I live. It was just like too much. So, and after about 2 months, she was like, yeah, she goes, why do you think that this is freaking you out and burning you out so much? And it finally hit me. I was like, because I can't control what anybody else is doing.
Mm-hmm. I wrote this over the course of 8 years, and I never anticipated people calling it a mental health tool. It was like the furthest thing from my mind. I just wanted to talk about what it's like to be a woman entrepreneur and what it's like to be a woman entrepreneur without children. And the first time I got a review that was like, this is a mental health must have, I literally sort of stopped and I took a breath and I was like, holy cow, it could totally be. Like in the back of the book, I actually share exercises around what it took to reshape success, what it took to reshape my idea of self-love. And I'm so grateful that women have really connected to it and are calling it that. And the coolest things that are coming forward is, I'm so focused on entrepreneurship. I've been an entrepreneur for 11 years. What's happening is women-owned businesses, women or corporations with female empowerment programs in place are connecting to it and wanting to find a way to bring me and this material into their continuing education programs, into their growth opportunities. And that's incredibly cool. I think that's a beautiful thing to do, to get out in front of burnout, to reshape literally what for corporations bringing their employees back or who have brought their employees back, what to do to make sure we never get to that place again. If that's possible, because burnout is a cycle that I think we'll go through several times in life, but
yeah. And like you said, over different things, right? I
right.
mean, I know that a lot of companies that, were like, you have to be in the office to work, even during the pandemic. The whole Great Resignation that happened was because people didn't want to work in the
Right.
office, and they didn't want to work for toxic people anymore, and they didn't realize that they were working for a toxic person until they weren't in the office anymore, and they didn't deal with the toxicity, right? They were like, I remember a friend of mine actually was working for this really toxic person and didn't realize it until, she was working at home for like 4 months, and she was like, oh my God, I've been getting my ass kicked for the last like 8 years, every freaking day.
Yeah.
Every freaking day. And because her boss wasn't in proximity, he couldn't abuse her, basically, right? Or any of the other employees, because he wasn't a leader, he was a boss. And there's, as you know, a huge difference. And she was like, fuck this. I am never going back to the office. And if he makes me come back to the office, I'm going to find another job.
Yep.
And so after, I think it was the beginning of 2021, because I had just gotten COVID, she said, she goes, well, he's calling us back in. And I said, what are you doing? And she goes, I'm interviewing. And I said, awesome. So she finds another job and she calls him up and, she says, I'm sending you my resignation letter. And he's like, you can't quit. And she's like, what do you mean I can't quit? I quit. And he goes, well, you can't quit, and then he goes, well, I'm firing you.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, okay, does that make you feel better about yourself? And it was like this whole, like, just asshole episode. And it was just one of those things where, so she quits, and now she's working for this company where if she wants to go in, she can. If she doesn't have to, they're flexible with her. And I think a lot of companies are kind of getting there, but a lot of people left that company. And I believe, don't quote me, but I believe I heard a couple of weeks ago that they replaced him because of how toxic they didn't realize how toxic he was until people were like, I don't want to work for him anymore. I don't want to work for him anymore.
A lot of things were uncovered during that time. A lot of people actually turned to their passion projects, and it gave people an opportunity to write the book, publish the book, take the art class, take a foreign language class. I was thinking about this the other day, like, what did I do during COVID that, furthered myself? And I was on the receiving end of that, where I run a hybrid publishing house, and last year we published 18 books. It was like a surge of, the year before I published 8. 2021, I published 18. This year we've published 6. And we published less this year because 18 was way too many. And so I had to reevaluate and slow down. And honestly, that's part of entrepreneurship too. It's looking at the ebb and flow. And as a professional storyteller, as someone in the publishing industry, and as a recovering burnout, I know I won't ever go to that place again. And the last thing I wanted to do was burn out while promoting my book about burnout.
Right.
So,
yeah. That would have been ironic.
Right.
So yeah.
But what I did was I moved my book from my back burner forward during COVID, and so many things came, forward from that. But the Great Resignation is definitely an interesting, I don't even know what to call it. It's like a consequence, I think, of the pandemic, and people actually looking at you know what? I don't like my job. I don't want to go back there. I want to go do something. Life's too short. I want to go do something that's going to make me happy, satisfied, give me the freedom to do whatever I want to do during my downtime.
Right. And I don't know if it's a consequence or a product from it, right?
Right.
Because it's like, I don't think people realized what was really going on until COVID hit. And as bad as COVID is, um, a lot of good came out of it. And it's weird because I always say that out of everything bad, something good comes out of it. And I think with COVID, a lot of people realized that, being treated like shit was not a good thing. But I don't think that they realized that they were until they weren't, which is what happened to my friend. Because you're in this in the everyday.
Yeah.
So you're just like, okay, I'm here and
Yep.
I'm working, and okay, my boss is an asshole, but you don't really think about like he's a bully until you're out of it, like she was, and she was just like, man, I don't have that tension that I had every day. I don't have the stress that, he's gonna, walk over and take paperwork off my desk and go, what's this? What's this?
Yeah.
Can you imagine? I would be like, get your hands off my desk. Like that's just, but apparently that's what he did. And I think the other thing was that people were starting to realize that they can work from home. And not only that, it removes the stress of sitting in traffic for 45 minutes, right? Getting up an hour and a half earlier than you have to, sitting in traffic 45 minutes to work, back from work, and the stress of if the traffic doesn't let up, you're going to be late for work, right? Now you just like wake up, roll into the office, and you're there, go into the kitchen, make coffee, have the dogs at your feet, whatever. And people are more productive than they were, before. So, okay. So, what made you decide to become an entrepreneur?
So, my big mission in life has been to elevate the female voice so that as women, we have a wider variety of women to look up to. And I've always been in the storytelling space. I was bullied as a kid. I had low self-esteem as a kid. I've been 5'9" and curvy with like big hair since I was 10. I was always like the tallest kid in school. And the only person I had to look up to was an actress on The Facts of Life. I think her name is Tootie.
Yes. Mindy something, right?
Yep. She was pretty much it. That was the only person. And growing up in the supermodel era, if you didn't look like Cindy Crawford and you didn't look like, Claudia Schiffer, you were bullied. And that was me. Yeah. So I went off to college and got into the writing industry because I really wanted to change where the spotlight landed, how we could share other people's voices, elevate all of it to create stronger sisterhoods, to create, stronger unity, empathy, all of that. Yeah. And along the way, I moved around from one aspect of story to another. So I became a journalist and an essayist and a web developer, a publicist. And it felt like I was gathering all these tools, but eventually I had a bad day at work. I was working for, a big company, and I was like, what do I really want to do? Like, I'm not good at working for somebody else. I'm not good at waiting for validation from somebody else who I don't ever believe is going to give it to me because they don't see me the way I see me. This can't be what I'm doing. And honestly, you're either an entrepreneur or you're not. Like, you were either born with this in your veins or not. And I was always trying to ignore that. So I came home from work, had a bad day, sat down, and I started asking myself questions like, what do I really want to do? What can I see myself doing? And it all came back to this mission. So my first gig, as an entrepreneur was a nonprofit. I went over to the deep end. You don't just create a business. Creating a nonprofit is very challenging. It involves the government, a governing board, an advisory board. It's a very different kind of ballgame. But I started a bullying solutions organization for young girls, pretty much as the girl on girl bullying was going like this. It just started to ramp up. Yeah. And I took my 401k, opened up this organization, and it just sort of blew up nationally pretty much overnight. And that's my introduction to entrepreneurship. Not something I necessarily wish on others. I think entrepreneurship is hard as it is, but then hitting something so strong on the, so dead on in a bubble without the proper, I had the foundation, I had the structure, I had all the things in place, but the demand was so overwhelming that I burned out over the course of like 3 or 4 years. It was just everywhere, but I felt a calling, right. And I took the jump, did the thing, ran after it. And that's how I became an entrepreneur.
Which is great. And, I don't understand. And I don't understand why women or girls bully girls, or why women disparage women who have different opinions, and why women can't just lift each other up, because it blows my mind.
I think it's a learned behavior.
It's a learned behavior, but as adults, and I guess it's the people you surround yourself with, right? But I mean, our group, we lift each other up.
Yeah.
Right. We're that hand up, that if somebody is struggling with something, they talk about it, we help them through it. If we're struggling with something, we talk about it, they help us through it. And I don't understand why that's just not the norm. Because I've worked in so many companies where it was like women, and holy shit, they're catty, man. They're just, they're catty. And it's like, I remember one company that I worked for rather. And there were, I think in our department, it was like 80% women. And you would think that it would be like, hey, what can we do to help each other? Oh no, it was like, how can I, and not me, but them, how can I fuck this person over so I can move up?
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh my God, how about, why don't we all work together? And it wasn't everybody, but it was definitely a good amount of people. And I find in the entrepreneurial space that it's really not like that, at least not anymore. I would say about maybe 6 years ago it was a little different. But now I think that people are really helpful, and they're empathetic, right? And they want to help. And that's what I love, because that's what I want to do, is I want to help. I want to help somebody get to the next level if I can help them. I want to introduce them to people that'll help them get to the next level. Whatever.
I'm a connector too. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. We're connectors. So, but yeah, so, there's people out here listening, and they're sitting there going, oh my God, I hate my job and I want to become an entrepreneur. Or, I'm in my job. This is what I really want to do. I want to become an entrepreneur. What advice would you have for them?
So, in my career, I've always created something out of demand. So I spent 18 months in research and development before I launched the organization, which was my first business. My current business, the hybrid publishing house, also created out of demand. My book and where I'm taking this also created, I'm finding places for demand and opportunity, and I'm creating something. That's always been my, I think the reason for my success is because I see an opportunity and I shape it based on what I believe my customer would want, and then I go do it. So again, if you feel entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart, it is, you either are an entrepreneur or you're not. If you're just unhappy in your job and you think you're going to go out and you're going to create this thing because you think it's going to give you freedom, it takes a while for that to happen. And so really take pause and reflect on, like, do you have the stamina to make this last? And then my honest to God advice is to do research first. Find a place that has an opportunity in a category that you're interested in, and create something based on demand and opportunity.
Excellent. Yeah, and it's not for the faint of heart. And we talk about that on every show. It is just not, entrepreneurship isn't easy. And, for me, it was out of necessity. The first time it wasn't. The first time it was because the company that I work with pissed so many people off that they were like, we want to work with you. And I'm like, you can. I kind of signed an NDA and a non-compete. And this was like 14 years ago. I had 8 months. So I was like, in 8 months, I can help you. Right now, I can't. I can guide you and tell you what you need to do, but I can't, legally, I can't help you. And when 8 months was over, man, my phone was just like ringing. I can't even tell you how many clients I had. It was like nuts. So I was like, okay, we'll just, whatever you need, we'll get. And I, got people to help me. And because I couldn't do it myself, like I don't build websites. I have people, that do that, on our team. And it was like, we need a website. We need to figure out our email. We need to figure out SEO. And SEO was like new back then.
Yeah.
It was, it was changing a few words here and there. And so it was like, oh, I can do that piece, so I can help you with that, but I can't, do anything else. But the second time around, it was through necessity. And I remember going, I can collect unemployment and look for a job, or I can create something.
Yeah.
And I couldn't sit home and collect unemployment. I was like, that's not me. Right. Mm-hmm. And I've always had the entrepreneurial spirit, and I didn't know that that's what it was. I just knew that I really never wanted to work for anybody. And I, wasn't good at listening to people who weren't as smart as I was. And that, not to disparage anybody, but, at the end of the day, when you have somebody who's telling you what to do and way more about it than they do.
Yeah, that's hard.
Going, why am I listening to you? Like, why am I? But I didn't realize that was the entrepreneurial spirit. And then when I became an entrepreneur the second time around, it was like, oh, I get it. I've had my whole freaking life.
I don't know. When I was younger, I knew I wanted to make a difference. Like I knew that was in my
100%. Yeah.
In my space. When I launched the nonprofit and it blew up, I burned out. I went back to my roots of storytelling, and I changed the model of the nonprofit from B2C to B2B, and I started training facilitators around the country. I partnered with Southwest and was flown all over the place to train facilitators, and I would pack my facilitations with free time to go play. That was part of my burnout recovery. I had to play. I had to bring in lightness again. So I'm sitting in California, and I'm highly intuitive. I'm empathetic. I listen to that internal calling, and I got this urge to go to Manhattan Beach. And it was like 45 minutes out of my way, but I was like, all right, I'm going to trust this. I don't have anything else to do. I'm going to go to Manhattan Beach. And I see this bar that's like buzzing, and I'm like, oh, let's go check that out. And I walk in, and there's 2 people I know there out of every place I could have walked into.
Wow.
Happened to see 2 people, and there was a private party happening, and they're like, oh my gosh, come in, let me introduce you to some folks. And I wound up meeting an editor with the Huffington Post at the time, and she's like, so what do you do? And I was like, well, I'm an entrepreneur, but I'm a writer, and I'm burnt out, so I'm kind of figuring out what I want to do right now. And she's like, oh my gosh, Ariana Huffington is coming out with a book about burnout. You should write about this and let me publish it. And I did, which led me to an opportunity I had never seen coming. I'm a natural storyteller. This has been something I've been professionally doing since college, and never once thought I could make a business out of it. But because I was out here sharing my public story, my story publicly, women were coming out of the woodwork and like, hey, help me do this. I want to do this. How did you do this? And I'm like, I don't know. You just write some stuff and you throw it out here and you email this person and she puts it on the internet or she publishes it. That's it. And they're like, no, teach me. So I started a second business based on that, where I was like, I guess, let me see what this feels like. And that sort of space and like teaching women how to put their stories out into the world really fed my mission, my overall mission. And it gave me the clarity to write this particular book unapologetically enough. So I spent the next 5 years pitching literary agents. And I pitched 100 agents over the course of 5 years. I stopped counting rejection letters at about 44.
Wow.
And they would always compare my work to, I got compared to Glennon Doyle. I got compared to Elizabeth Gilbert. My work got compared to Brene Brown, Gabby Bernstein, New York Times bestselling authors. And because I didn't have their following size, their platform size, I would always get passed over. So after, seriously, I heard that probably, I'd say 75% of the time, my rejection letters came back. And I had agents like literally calling me with like agony in their voice that they couldn't pick my project up. They couldn't pick me up because I wasn't saleable. My work was good, but they couldn't sell it. So that led me to my current business, where I woke up one day and I heard this like deep thing down in my soul where it was like, go just be the house. If you can't get picked up, there are other women who can't get picked up either. And we have good, strong stories to tell that will help shape society in a different way. They just need help. And so I created my publishing house based on the idea that it's, you know, these books that are out here that change lives aren't always written by the folks that we've heard and, you know, read stories from countless times before. There are other people that need the opportunity to be seen and heard and witnessed. They just need help. And so that's what I did. Yeah. I created a business born out of opportunity, necessity, and demand for a third time.
Wow. And this is, and it's, I don't think people realize we all have a story, right? I mean, we all do. And it's just a matter of finding out the pieces of that story that will resonate. And I know you and I talked about that. And I know a lot of people that they should be telling their story. They won't, because they don't want some stuff out there. And I'm like, but that's the meat. That's what people, that's what resonates with people, is your experience, what you've gone through, how you overcame it, how you became, who you are. And we had that conversation, and we'll probably have that again next year in a different show. But I mean, at the end of the day, everybody goes through shit.
Yeah.
And nobody talks about it.
No. And there's authors have this line between what's public and what's private. And I think this is part of the issue why so many people don't share their stories, is because they think everything I've ever been through has to show up in this book. Right. And that's not true. We have a litmus test that we can create for ourselves to make it very, very clear that at some point you get to hold things back because that's your right as a human being. Not everything you've been through is subject for public absorption. Right. And there is a fine line, and figuring that out is unique for everybody. Right. Right. And it's funny because there are certain things that I talk about now that I never talked about, when I was younger. And, but there are some things that I still won't talk about because it's not for public consumption. It's mine, right? Yeah. It's my experience, and my friends and my loved ones, and, they know my story, but the whole world doesn't need to know everything. Right. Exactly. Right. And, but I think that there are people out there, that need to talk to you. Thank you. Well, yeah. I mean, when we talked, I was very serious about, what I said, and that's not for public consumption, but there are a lot of people out there that I think have stories that, you can discern what should be public and what shouldn't, and they can, do that through you. Like I told you, I have a possible lead for you, because this woman that I met, actually Kat had a
one of her podcast,
Right,
thingy.
networking events.
Yeah, and somebody was like, "Oh, I'm looking for a ghostwriter," and I was like, "I have the perfect person for you."
Oh, thank you. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
we're going to be talking after the weekend, but and I think that's great because you know what? Not everybody writes, and when we were talking, I told you my friend Annie, who sadly passed away in May. Um, but we used to joke. She was like, "Man, we need to write a book about you." And then she and I were going to, but it unfortunately never, came to pass. And I know there's
Yeah.
a book in there somewhere, right? It's
Yep,
just,
totally. I'm definitely. I think there's probably a number of books and everybody. And what's so fascinating is when I do these live readings, I'm out here talking about, I actually do read from the book and share Q&As and stuff and answer questions. And people are like, what are you doing next? And I think I'm living book 2 right now. And I'm allowing book 1 to unfold because there's so much here. There's so much happening. And this has been like 25 years in the making. I feel like this book and the purpose for it is literally it's the sum of everything I've done in my career leading up to this point. And I'm not even, I should be thinking about book 2. And when I feel into it, it's still like raw in my throat. I think book 2 is sharing what's happened. I'm a COVID bride and sharing how life has been, moving into this new evolution of who I am.
Mhm.
But I honestly feel like it's sharing, my next book is probably sharing the manifestation of what's happening and what's unfolding.
Right. And it's funny you say manifestation because I started, and I won't get into like complete details, but I started manifesting seriously the last full moon and the last new moon. And on the full moon, I let go things that no longer serve me.
Mm-hmm.
And I put a picture online and a friend of mine was like, holy shit, do you see that? And I'm like, no. And there were spirits there. Like you could see that there were like other people that were there that weren't there.
Oh my gosh.
I'll send it to you. And I was like, holy shit. So I sent it to Kim Russo, and then she saw like a native, like a chief, and she kind of drew it out. That's not what I saw. I saw something else, and I kind of circled it. But it was just like the weirdest thing. Yeah, it was kind of crazy. And then the last new moon, which was Saturday, I manifested things that I wanted, and I've never done that before. And I had very clear intentions. And actually, they said, well, go into the manifestation grateful. And Kim helped me work on my one sheet. She went above and beyond. And I was so grateful to her. And I was like, I'm going to take this feeling, into that. And I, wrote down what I was manifesting and what I wanted to bring to me. And it freaking happened like yesterday.
Oh, that's great.
It was nuts. I was just like, shut the front door. Like, are you freaking kidding me? But the really interesting thing about it was going into that manifestation grateful. I have been waking up every day filled with gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
And I never did before.
I love that.
And it's an amazing feeling, right? You're just like,
oh yeah, totally.
Like grateful. I mean, look, shit happens, right? Not everything is always going to be sunshine and roses, but there's always something to be grateful for.
Yeah.
Every day.
Right now it's, I'm highly sensitive. I'm like super emotional, like 1,000 copies of Unapologetically Enough were packed up in Illinois, driven down to Texas, made it off the truck in Texas, sitting in a warehouse. And I get images of like, rows and rows and rows of my books. And gratitude doesn't even begin to like describe what's happening inside. It literally is recognition of what I've done, how hard I've worked, holding the intention of this unfolding. And that is part of entrepreneurship, is like, so many of us have these big dreams, these big visions, these huge missions in life, and we don't think it's ever going to happen because we don't see it now, right? That's part of the manifestation process, is just sort of staying in the flow of,
Right.
My dream for this book is to impact millions of women on their own journey of self-discovery of what it is to accept being unapologetically enough. And that's a huge mission.
It is, but it will.
Yeah, exactly.
Because, I mean, it will, because when you, and I love the title, unapologetically enough, one of the biggest things that has been coming out in the last couple of years is authenticity, and being our authentic selves. And I was talking to Jessica Farnley yesterday, and she did an interview, and so guys, these things get like recorded and then they come out like weeks or like a month after it's recorded. But one of the things that came up was being authentic, and when we try to be somebody that we're not, we attract people to us, but it's the people who are attracted to who we're not.
Yep.
When we become authentic, we're attracting people who are our tribe. And that makes all the difference, because when you are your authentic self, you can be unapologetic, because at the end of the day, you shouldn't apologize for being who you are.
Yeah. You showed up as you.
Yeah. You show up as you. And I think that it's amazing. I think it's going to resonate with so many people, because there are so many people out there that are still being somebody that they're not, and they're not doing it to be deceitful. I think they're doing it because they think they have to, because they think in order for them to fit in, they have to, act this certain part.
Yeah.
And we're here to tell you, I mean, Carrie and I, that no, be you, because when you're you, and that's the other thing, it is so freaking freeing.
Yeah.
Isn't it? It's just, it's this feeling of, I don't have to hide anything anymore. I don't have to, act like this person that I'm not, and I don't have to accept people in my life that, that expect me to be like that. And my circle has dwindled, but it's dwindled to the people that I want.
Yeah. I've had that happen before. Yep.
It's great.
You go through cycles of different seasons, different friends.
Yes.
The title is an interesting story. I'll tell you that quick. The term enough was a trigger word for me while I was in burnout. And
I was going to ask you that, but go ahead.
One of the reasons why I ended up in burnout, because first of all, the nonprofit sector is actually a very hard place to be as a business owner, because you're fighting for the same dollar as a number of other businesses, and not, that happens in for-profit businesses too. Why would somebody come to me versus going to somebody else? A lot of in the for-profit space, you're working with price point, you're working with personality. In the nonprofit space, you're basically asked to prove yourself, prove that you deserve this dollar over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. So when I was in that nonprofit industry, I was in my journals. I was like, it's not enough. We don't have enough. It's barely enough. And it was coming down to money. It was coming down to people. It was coming down to time. And when I was in burnout and I started going through my journals, because I do believe we attract everything in our lives, right? And I was like, I brought this on. This happened. I did this. How did I do this? I want to find out how I did this so I never do it again. Mm-hmm. The term enough was constantly in my journals. And I went through and I literally highlighted it. And instead of healing it and turning towards it and pulling it close and like loving on it, I was like, F you, Band-Aid, shut the door. I'm never using this again. So I spent the next 6 years of my life walking away from enough. I never used it. I replaced it.
Wow.
So, here I am. I launched this business because I couldn't get picked up by a literary agent. And I wrote this book. I'm working with an editor I adore who's got all this great experience. And the title of it was, something lame. And she writes in the margins and she's like, Carrie, this is not your title. Your title is Unapologetically Enough. And I saw it. I closed my computer. I threw my phone across the room. I ran into the corner of the couch and hit the fetal position. And I started crying. And it was, this huge release. And after a while, I contacted one of my coaches, and I'm like, my editor thinks the book is called Unapologetically Enough. And all she sends back is the angel emoji. And I'm like, what the hell does that mean? That's not helpful right now. What do you think?
Right.
And she's like, look up synonyms for the title. So I did. And unapologetically, I love the term enough. Back then I saw it as lack. I saw it as, desecrate and need. This time when I looked at it, the first thing I saw was abundant, full, above. And I was like, holy crap, this is my title. So I did the work, I healed it, I pulled it in. And I shared that story in the preface actually, because the one thing I am is I can't not fully show up. You get all of it. I've been doing it for a long time. I don't know how else to not. And so I was like, if you knew me then, you knew that I was vocal about the word enough. I was actually brought into corporations to change language so that people didn't tell their employees, you're not doing enough. I'm like, I can't call a book something without sharing the backstory. And so, yeah, you get that in the preface. And the title is something that I've not heard a single negative thing about the title. It really does stick. It clicks.
Oh yeah, I think it's perfect, and I agree with you with enough. I think I just started sharing about being yourself and that you are enough. Mm-hmm. And people, they get it. They're like, oh, because I never looked at enough as derogatory. I always looked at it as a, you are enough, because I've been told, you're too much.
Yeah.
You're too intense. You're too this. I had a business coach tell me that I needed to be less me.
I hope you fired that person.
Oh, well, yeah, that was a whole nother story, but that's another podcast. But I realized that I am enough.
Yeah.
And and that's freeing. That's the whole thing, is that, everything that we go through now is freeing. It's to free us from all of the negativity and all of the, disparaging things that we've been told over the years, and how somebody knows more than you, they've been doing something longer than you. And meanwhile, you're like, no, you may have been doing this longer, but I know what I'm doing, because I know what resonates with the people that I'm connecting with. So, enough has been resonating with me. So when I saw your title, I just love it. It's just,
oh, thank you.
It's you're being unapologetic. You're not apologizing for who you are, and you're enough.
Yep.
And I think it's perfect.
When it comes to books specifically, I think there's a time and a place for them. And I think if I would have been picked up and this would have come out 8 years ago, I don't think it would have had the impact that it has today. Mm-hmm. And so I see the journey and what's all been here for me, and these businesses that I have created, and this journey of entrepreneurship that I have gone down, all for the sake of bringing not just my book into the world, but other people's voices. The timing is perfect. So I'm incredibly grateful.
And so on that note, which is like a perfect segue for existing entrepreneurs, for seasoned entrepreneurs, mm-hmm. What's a struggle that they may be going through now that you've come through the other side of?
Honestly, I think trusting that internal voice and being still and allowing space in between all the busyness that's something that I've really leaned into that I think a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with, because we are driven to go, to run, to push, to like constant.
Right.
It's hard for us to take a setback. It's hard for us to stop. It's hard for us to chill out and let things settle. But it's in that stillness and in that sort of blossoming that new opportunities spark, that, you know, something clicks and you see, it's not the shiny object syndrome. It's there's growth here that is undiscovered, that is uncharted. I'm a trailblazer, and my history is I see something, I lean into it, I go blaze a trail over here, and then I turn around and I'm like, hey, over here, you know? And I think a lot of entrepreneurs really struggle with that idea of let's lean back and let this unfold.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is hard. I mean, as an entrepreneur, you know, I don't think I've done that yet. I don't think I've, you know, kind of sat back and settled and I don't think I've done that yet, but I think it's really good advice, because I think that listening to our internal voice when it says, you know, you need to take a step back and kind of look at what's going on, and breathe. And breathe. And it's hard to breathe, you know, especially when you're in growth mode.
Yeah, totally.
It's just, it's totally hard. And I'm, you know, so I'm in growth mode right now. And it's so funny because I will work, you know, we have the new puppy who's actually being quiet right now, which I can't believe the two of them. Okay, normally by now there'd be like massive barking, but we're doing good. But during the day, you know, I usually have them and they're barking and they're playing, and I really can't get a lot done during the day. I can't have meetings during the day usually, so I get my stuff done at night. And my wife will come in here at like 10 o'clock or 9:30 being like, I'm going to bed. Are you coming to bed? And I'm like, nah, I'll be in a minute. And next thing I know, it's like 2:30 in the morning. And I'm like, oh, shit, you know, and then I have to get up at like 8.
Yeah.
And that's happened a bunch in the past, probably 2-3 months. And I last week, I was working on something, and she goes, you coming to bed? And I went, actually, yeah, this will be here in the morning. And it was the first time that I did that. But of course I laid in bed awake till 1 o'clock in the morning going, man, should I get up? Should I get up? Should I, you know, should I do that? So it was one of those, you know, but I'm getting better at it.
It is really important. And when I was recovering from burnout, I made a list of non-negotiables. I write about this in Unapologetically Enough. I made a list of non-negotiables.
I need to get like a copy of that. So we'll talk about that after this, because I definitely want to.
Well, it's available anywhere books are sold.
But
there were things I had to incorporate in my life because I had to change my life. And dancing has always been something I've done. I had to bring that back into my life, which meant I had to schedule it into my life. I take breaks. The 12 o'clock hour is like usually where I don't have anything scheduled, which is why I could do this then, because it's blocked out in my calendar and people can't schedule. And as I've progressed and each business I launch, I incorporate something new. And so what I've done for this particular business, Fridays are my free days. I do whatever I want. If I want to work, I do. If I want to take the day off, I do. If I want to travel, I do. And it's my space to breathe. And a lot of times the Friday is the day that I allow my monkey mind to unwind, and I challenge myself to not look at my phone. And it frees up space for that thing that I know I need. As an intuitive creative, I need space to create and allow the thoughts in the back of my head that I'm not paying attention to come forward. So it's been, I've been an entrepreneur for 11 years, and I think I just got the hang of this year.
Wow.
The space thing.
Wow. That's that took a while, right? But you did it. You recognized it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't. I think a lot
No,
of
because
people
we would
don't.
rather be out there hustling and making money and trying to figure out what to do and, yeah. But for me, the flow happens when I allow it to happen. So
Right, right. That's awesome.
thanks.
Um, so you're living your next book. So
Yes.
that's not out yet. Um, and as Carrie said, you can get the book anywhere books are sold, and I'm going to be buying it as soon as we get done
Thank
with
you.
this. I definitely want to read it. Um, and I wanted to read it before we did this, but it's like time, really time. So um, there's that. But so we're almost at an hour already. See, it goes so fast. I've
Yeah.
had people, be like, "Oh, it's an hour," and I'm like, "It goes so fast." Um, Jessica and I were talking yesterday, and how you talk about your dancing. We were talking about our music because we're both musicians, and I haven't allowed time until recently to do my music, even just here. Uh, so I downloaded this app, and it's a karaoke app,
That's
but
great.
but it allows me to sing, and I can have harmony if I want. So it's like it's awesome. And I started playing the piano, and my crazy 12-week-old puppy. I actually played the piano yesterday. Um, she was running around like, like
I gave her the zoomies. That's
no,
awesome.
it was like it wasn't even the zoomies. It was just like because the zoomies they like run in the living room, and then we have like a patio panel door that has like a little doggy door on it. So
Hmm.
they run through that and they zoom that way, like through the yard, through the house, until they
Wow.
whatever. Oh, it's insane. Um, but so I started playing the piano, and I looked down, and she's just quiet and listening
Mm.
to the listening like her head was leaning on the base of the piano, so she was getting the vibration. And then as I started singing, she kind of looked up, and then her eyes kind of because I was doing ballads because I didn't want to do anything crazy to get her excited. So but it was just so cool, and I was like,
That's
you
great.
know, and it's good for the soul. It just
It
felt
is.
so good for the soul, and it's like so being able to allow time and space to get back into that, I think is important. Um,
Hmm.
so because we are at that time, what is the last question I always ask our guests is what lights your fire, and it could be personal, it could be professional, but what is the one thing that just lights Carrie up? What is your passion?
I think I'm living my passion. The thing that lights me up is sisterhood, is connection, is um, inspiring others to use their voice to put that out into the world to make a difference. I've been doing that since I was 19. It's been something that is deep in within me. It is um, that teacher in me, that mentor in me, that like world changer. I want to go do this, elevate the female voice. That's why it is, I think the world needs it.
Oh yeah.
And I feel really blessed that I've been somebody that like God or the universe or whoever it is you believe in, like gave this assignment to me that like, go help.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I think a lot of us get into what we do because we want to help people.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, there are some entrepreneurs that just want to make money, and I get that. But I think that the people that I'm connecting with anyway, and myself, we want to help people, and like you said, elevate people. So I think that
Yep.
that's fantastic.
Thank you.
So yeah, so thank you for
Thanks for
taking time
having
out
me.
of your day.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and let's do this again when the second book is starting to come out.
Okay, sounds like
of you on paper, right? So we can start talking about that. But actually, I do want to have you on again and maybe talk about your process, or how you help people get the book out of them.
Oh yeah, totally. I love that.
I think that would be totally cool. So
Sounds
thank
good.
you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. So hang on, I'm gonna say goodbye to everybody, and I'll get right back to you.
Okay.
So, everybody, I want to thank you again for hanging in for this hour, with me and my awesome guest. Go out and like the page, share the page, download the episode, subscribe, and just really thank you. And thank you for the comments. And I've been getting emails, which I didn't expect. So that was kind of cool. But for now, I'm going to sign off. Iris Goldfeder, the Cookbook, and go out, find what lights your fire. Bye, everyone.